evening,
Blog
America.
Talk Radio.
It is Monday, December the 14th, 2015, and it's time for news and commentary with a dose of conservative common sense.
On the eve of our struggle for independence, a man who might have been one of the greatest among the founding fathers, Dr. Joseph Warren, president of the Massachusetts Congress, said to his fellow Americans, "Our country is in danger, but not to be despaired of. On you depend the fortunes of America. You are to decide the important question upon which rests the happiness and the liberty of millions yet unborn. Act worthy of yourselves." Well, I believe we, the Americans of today, are ready to act worthy of ourselves, ready to do what must be done to ensure happiness and liberty for ourselves, our children, and our children's children. From time to time, we've been tempted to believe that society has become too complex to be managed by self-rule, that government by an elite group is superior to government for, by, and of the people. We are a nation that has a government, not the other way around. And this makes us special among the nations of the earth. Our government has no power except that granted it by the people. It is made up of men and women who raise our food, patrol our streets, man our mines and factories, teach our children, keep our homes, and heal us when we're sick. Professionals, industrialists, shopkeepers, clerks, cabbies, and truck drivers. They are, in short, we the people. Their patriotism is quiet but deep. Their values sustain our national life. With the idealism and fair play which are the core of our system and our strength, we can have a strong and prosperous America at peace with itself and the world. So with all the creative energy at our command, let us begin an era of national renewal. Let us renew our determination, our courage, and our strength. And let us renew our faith and our hope. It is time for us to realize that we're too great a nation to limit ourselves to small dreams. We will again be the exemplar of freedom and a beacon of hope for those who do not now have freedom. We are a nation under God, and I believe God intended for us to be free.
Good evening once again, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, you are listening to News and Commentary with Dan Butcher. And I am Dan Butcher. It is great to be back on the air with you folks tonight. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. Primarily what we're going to be talking about tonight is all of the changes that are going on with the show, as well as all the changes that have happened with me personally and professionally with my website. A lot of people that follow us on Facebook and Twitter and the other social media sites are very aware that that we are no longer associated with Pundit Press, and I am now the editor-in-chief as well as the publisher of the High Plains Daily News. We have moved our radio network to High Plains Plains Talk Radio. And, of course, the website is highplainsdailynews.com. I will be joined tonight by my new co-host, who is Glenn Atkinson. A lot of you folks are familiar with Glenn. He's been doing a lot of co-hosting duties with Scott Osborne and all the fine folks over at Continuing for Truth Radio, in particular with Dan Wilson on Saturday Symposium with Dan Wilson. Glenn has also been on this show a few times already. He's been on American Sovereignty Radio as well. He's also been on Southern Sense, which with the one and only radio chick herself, Annie Ubella. So, Glenn, since coming to our country, and particularly to the great state of Texas, where I am also based, from our neighbor to the north in Canada, tomorrow night, as kind of a promo to the show, we will be actually discussing Glenn's very unique story and what he went through trying to actually immigrate to our country legally. Glenn did everything the right way, but yet was still thrown in the slammer by our federal government. And so I'm really looking forward to talking with Glenn about that. A lot of you are familiar with Glenn's story. He's done some other interviews and had some other articles written about it, but this will be the first time that I've actually sat down and visited with him. And so we'll be discussing that with Glenn tomorrow night. Of course, here later at the bottom of the hour, the one and only Liz Loris will be joining us, as she does every Monday night. I'm very excited to have Liz back on the air and to talk with her in a few minutes as well. Just to kind of let everybody know what's happening with the website and with the show. I had to make a decision as far as moving forward professionally. My wife and I own a small media company called High Plains Media, and we decided that it was time to put our own brand front and center, and thus that was why we made the decision to go with the High Plains Daily News. The High Plains Daily News is a website that I have used in the past when I first started out, and we decided to bring it back front and center. And we're using the High Plains Daily News as our national website, as well as you will notice that we're covering a lot more Texas news. And since so much of what happens in Texas affects the nation as a whole, we felt that since we are based here in the state of Texas, that we needed to focus a lot more on Texas news. And in particular, we're focusing on Texas news that affects the nation as a whole. So we hope that you are enjoying that. All of our contributors that were with us at Pundit Press have come with us over to the High Plains Daily News. All of our shows that were involved on the Pundit Press Radio Network, all 31 of them have come over to the High Plains Talk Radio Network. So nothing has changed. The only thing that really has changed is the name, and we're very excited about the future going forward. It was also kind of a legitimacy issue with the Pundit Press name and the Pundit Press brand. We were kind of continuing to get lumped in as just conservative bloggers. But, in reality, we are so much more than that. We, over the last 6 years, have evolved into a full-fledged conservative news media outlet. And we wanted to be portrayed as that, especially heading into the 2016 election. So we wanted to make sure that, we didn't kind of get overlooked a lot of things, and that people were taking us more seriously with our reporting and with our commentary, with our radio network. And so we feel that this move was very important into that direction, and that all of our staff members, all of our writers, all of our shows will benefit from it as well. Let's face it, a lot of times those of us in the conservative media kind of get, we're not taken seriously sometimes, and we get overlooked, even though we are really the dominant media in the country today. And so this is a move that you've seen a lot of other conservative media outlets make as well. The Blaze has done this with the branding of their TV, with their website, with their radio network. You're seeing a lot of that with townhall.com, with Breitbart, who actually started all of this when they brought all of their websites, big government and all of the other ones that they were producing together under one banner, under the great Andrew Breitbart's name. So you're going to see a lot more of this moving forward so that we can continue bringing the truth to the American people. Too often in today's society, all that you're getting from the liberal progressive media is sound bites, or you're getting press releases. And so we're trying to avoid that. We're trying to bring back something called journalism, something called investigative journalism, where we actually get down to what the truth about the story really is and bring you the actual information, not just what they want you to know, but what you actually should know, the actual truth. And that is something that we are striving for at the High Plains Daily News. That is something that we're striving for on the High Plains Talk Radio Network. And that's certainly something you're going to see on this program, of course, which is news and commentary. And that is why I have decided to surround myself with some great new contributors to this show. I've been fortunate over the last it seems like it's been almost 2 years since Liz and I did our first show together, but I'm very excited that Liz is going to be a regular part of this program. I'm very excited about Glenn being a new I'm tongue-tied here. I'm very excited about Glenn being a part of this program. A lot of you folks have already had a lot of exposure to Glenn. He was a participant on a roundtable discussion that we did with some other show hosts recently, and Glenn really stood out during that. And there was some great talk show hosts that were part of that roundtable that included John Matthews. So in the fact that Glenn was one of the ones that really stood out in that during that conversation is really led to me to talk with Glenn about him becoming permanent co-host of News and Commentary. And so without further ado, I'm going to bring Glenn on the air now. He's been waiting patiently while I've been sitting here rambling to start the show. Glenn, my friend, how you doing tonight, buddy?
Doing great, Dan. Thank you very much. Hello, America. Great to be here. Thank you very much for having me. I'm very blessed by the accolades and you having me here. Thank you.
Well, you bet, Glenn. It's I've been you and I talked last week, and then I've been promoting this and building it up all week. Heading all through the weekend, heading up to tonight. So we got a lot of very exciting things that are fixing to take place as we close out the year and head into the 2016 presidential election. Tomorrow night in particular, my listeners are really, really going to get to know you very well, get to know your story very well about what you went through trying to legally immigrate to our country, and in reality what you're continuing to go through. So I think the listeners are going to be very interested in your story tomorrow night, and then going forward, Glenn is. I've heard Glenn enough on other shows that I've been a part of with him, and just listening to him on other shows. Glenn, you're very well versed in a lot of different topics. So I'm very excited that you've joined the program, and I know our listeners are going to be very excited that you're now a part of the show as well.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm looking very much forward to it. Also, a new venture for you, and I'm glad. I'm blessed that you're including me with it. And we you and I, we don't have a loss for words, that's for sure.
No, not at all.
I'm sure we'll get along very well with the oodles of topics we can address, and have the listeners be a little more educated, and if callers call in, they can add to it if they wish and whatnot. So I'm looking very much forward to it, and tomorrow night's show too, so we can expose a little bit more about why I'm here and what's happened since I've been here.
Exactly, and I can't stress this enough, Glenn, and I'm going to kind of rant here for a minute. You and I were talking a little bit off air before the show begins, and one of my pet peeves right now is soundbite journalism, press release journalism, conspiracy journalism. I hear too many of my fellow show hosts that are getting involved in conspiracy theories, and I hear too many of my fellow writers doing the same. I read too many of them and see too many of them writing, following up on conspiracy theories, instead of getting down to the truth and bringing the news and information to the people. It's one thing if you're going to be sitting there and you're a professional talker and you're offering commentary, but you know what? By God, offer commentary that makes sense. Offer commentary that the people can learn from. Give the readers, give the listeners something that is of value, that means something, that is in reality and not make-believe. And we see a lot of that stuff, especially when we're dealing on topics with Barack Obama. We're seeing a lot of that nonsense taking place with Donald Trump. We're seeing a lot of nonsense being posted about the good things about him and the bad things on both sides of the aisle. And I was talking with you before the show that this is the time right now that we're vetting the candidates. This is when we're getting to know the candidates. My personal opinion is that the nomination is Donald Trump's to lose. And just when you think that he shot himself in the foot, he goes up, and now he's up to 41% nationally in the polls. even though Ted Cruz has taken the lead away from him in Iowa, I would suspect that by the end of the debate tomorrow night, Donald Trump will probably be leading in Iowa again. It's been a back and forth, a constant back and forth with the elections. But one thing that we're going to do on this show, and I had already told you this off the air, is that people keep pestering me who I'm endorsing for president. Ladies and gentlemen, number one, on the Democratic side, we have no one that is qualified to be in the Oval Office. There's certainly no one that we want anywhere near the Oval Office. If you're supporting Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton, Martin O'Malley, you need to have your head examined. Those folks are trying to see who can become the biggest socialist the fastest. They keep moving further and further to the left, promising who can give the most away. You're talking about Bernie Sanders, who has are you ready for this, folks? A $17 trillion giveaway program that he wants to enact while he's president. He wants to double the national debt. And Hillary's programs aren't much better. She's somewhere in the neighborhood of $5, $6, $7 trillion in new spending that she wants, and Martin O'Malley is somewhere in the neighborhood of $10 million in new $10 trillion in new spending he wants to enact. And then when we get on to the Republican side, the Republican bench is very, very deep through about the first 6 candidates. And then once you get past that, then you've got the folks that I think are just hanging around because they want an additional 15 minutes of fame. They want to increase their stock on the talk circuit, and et cetera. And that's fine if that's what they're there for. So be it. But they are adding a lot to the debates and a lot to the discussion. But I think after tomorrow night's debate, Glenn, I think we're going to see this field cut in about half, and then we're going to start seriously vetting the candidates, discussing the good, the bad, the indifferent of every single candidate.
Well, I agree, and as far as the Democrats go, I think they really, in their delusional mind, they think they're playing a game Monopoly, and I think that's what they stand for. They want a monopoly. They want all the money. They want all the control. They want everything, and to heck with the American people or the voters, if you will. But when it comes to the conservatives and the Republicans, I think you're right. I think it's going to be weeded out a lot more tomorrow, and with Donald Trump and now Cruz coming up a little more. There's a national poll just come out today, too, and they got Donald Trump at 41%. So that's the highest he's had since he started running in June.
Right.
But this go round, there's a lot more. There's a lot more people that have a lot to offer in their own, as far as Donald Trump, Cruz, Carson, Rubio, Fiorina. There's, forget about Bush. But anyways, those people there. I mean, we've got more than a handful of people that actually would do 10 times better job than Obama, Hillary, Sanders, O'Malley, any one of those ones that were running that are now gone. They'd had their 15 minutes of fame, as you pointed out. We've got a lot of people that can actually, if they don't even become the president, they can actually be in his in whomever's cabinet, doing a great job in whatever they're appointed to do, and if they accept and whatnot. So I think when you look at it from a very, very strong positive point of standpoint, we've got a lot of good. A lot of good clout here to take, and as opposed to, since Reagan, we really haven't had a lot of great people that could actually do something for this country and not just lie about it and get in there and and do something the complete opposite. So I think we're in good hands with a lot of good people, and it's all part of the vetting process. And I have a few people that I like and whatnot, but it isn't over till it's over, and and the thing is you can pay attention to these polls and you can pay attention to the crowds, but you really got to pay attention to the person and who they are, what they stand for, and it's somewhat of a guessing game because there's some people that can say one thing and do another like they've been doing, but I really do believe that the taxpayers, the American citizens, the voters themselves, have a lot to choose from, and they, Donald Trump and Ted Cruz and people like them, they're bringing out the silent majority, people that haven't voted in 20, 30 years, and some of them haven't voted at all, and even since Reagan. So we're blessed with having these people aren't as silent as they used to be. So we could have a lot more people coming out to the polls than we've had in decades. So this is a good thing, and I'm just licking my lips. I'm not a citizen yet, but I believe I will be before next November. I believe everything that's coming my way is going to happen. So therefore, but even at that, even in the last few years, I've actually worked on different people's campaigns as far as making some phone calls and whatever have you. I can't vote, but I'll be darned. I want to be able to. With God as my biggest help, of course, to have people get involved, and vote, and maybe persuade them, in a good way to vote for, whomever is the best person, and that's what it's all about, is getting people, off their duff, and and getting involved, because there's too many people that complain and they don't do nothing about it. So if we can kind of get them involved more, then we'll see some changes, good changes. So I'm looking forward to it. It's exciting times, really.
You bet. Just to remind everybody, at the bottom of the hour, Liz Loris will be joining us on the program. If you'd like to call into the program, the number is area code 516-666-9908. Once again, that call-in number is area code 516-666-9908. Just to let everybody know, I actually have we have 5 phone lines open out of the 50, which is kind of a rarity. And I would remind anybody, if you're already on the line and you'd like to join the conversation, make sure that you press 1 so that we know that you want to come on the air and talk. Glenn, I want to make this comparison real quick before we bring Liz on the air. And this is because you have a very unique perspective coming from Canada, because a candidate such as Bernie Sanders often throws the term socialist democracy around. It's also a term that Martin O'Malley is embracing. That is certainly a term. I still argue that it's just a foregone conclusion that the vice presidential candidate on the Democrat side is going to be Julian Castro, who is the current HUD secretary, former mayor of San Antonio. That is a term that he openly embraces. It's a term that Hillary Clinton doesn't openly embrace, but it's something that she certainly, with all of her policies that she's putting forward, is something that she is certainly aiming for. And in talking about socialist democracies, the first thing that would come to mind would be our neighbors to the north in Canada. Now, Canada has a lot of great things to offer. It's a very beautiful country, has a lot of great things going for it. Although with the election of Trudeau, they have certainly moved back to the left a lot further than they have been over the last few years. But, there's two things that come to mind when we're talking about socialist democracy, and that has to do, number one, which is the holy grail of the progressive movement, the liberal movement, the democratic movement, whatever you want to call them now. They're all one and the same, really, and that being single-payer health care. And also, I'll make this distinction. Freedom of speech in Canada is very restricted in some aspects versus what it is here. And Glenn, I would argue that there is no possible way, if you were still living in Canada, that you could do your own talk show like the one that we're doing tonight without facing some ramifications of breaking some type of law that would be considered hate speech or such for just simply telling the truth in Canada. So I was wondering, real quick before we bring Liz on, if you would address single-payer health care, which is the holy grail on the left right now, as well as freedom of speech, the difference between freedom of speech in Canada and here in the United States.
Yeah, you make some good points there, and it's amazing. I can give you an example of the single payer, the health care, and whatnot. That's all I know. I just turned 52, and that's all I know up in Canada. At the same time, I don't agree with it. I don't think it's right. I think myself that that is like an entitlement, as far as I'm concerned. It costs a lot of money to carry that. And we know that up in Canada. For an example, when I come down here in July of 2009, I come down to Texas here, the gas price down here, okay, well, let's put it this way. The gas price up there, they go by liters and whatnot, metric system and that, it was $1.30 a liter up there. Down here it was $1.87 a gallon. That's pretty amazing when you think of it. It's almost close to the same for a freaking liter as it is a gallon down here at the time. So we were paying like about $6 a gallon up there to $1.87. Okay, when you tax on all the other taxes on top of the $1.27, $1.30 of what it was, there's a bunch of taxes that go on top of that too. It's like here, but only more. It's worse. But so it was like $6 a gallon. So you're looking at 3 times the amount of and that was 9 years ago. So or for example, people that smoked down here at the time, they were like a little over $2 a package or $2.40 or whatever for the average package down up there. In some places, they were between $10 and $17 a package. Mind you, there's 5 more cigarettes up there, but it's unbelievable. So it's kind of like moving. It's kind of like moving from here in Texas to Los Angeles, California. The prices, and that's
right.
Solely, or a big part of it, is because of the health care. Someone's got to pay for it, so everybody pays for it, even if you're not using it, and even if whatever. So, to me, I think that is incredible. I don't like it because I don't believe in someone else paying for me. Hence, once we get into it tomorrow, I come down here, and the situation I'm in, I've never once taken anything from the government. I never will. As far as they owe me right now for what they've done to me. But I'm saying, as far as any going to welfare or any kind of health care thing or whatever, no. I believe that we have to earn that. We have to go out there and get a job and do whatever we have to do to support ourselves. And I don't get me wrong. I do understand that some people have hard times and whatever, but I do believe we have families and friends and whatnot, and whether it be churches or whatever, that these are all people and places that are designed to help one another. This is and that's fine and dandy. But see, God gives us free will and God's will, and the government they want to take from one and give to another. So we don't have no free will in that situation. So the entitlement is basically, we're telling you what you're going to do with your money, and here's what we're going to do. We're going to put over here, and we're going to give to this person. Well, you know what? There goes our rights. And so it all ties in, and I just don't agree with it. Canada is beautiful. It really is. It's probably, if not the most beautiful country. It really is amazing. But the being on radio and whatnot up there, no, I could not do this. I'd probably be pulled in the first 10 minutes, in certain ways. So it's just, you don't have you have some freedoms up there, and some more than here in some areas, but in other areas not. So it's kind of one of those things that, because we're capped off at about 34, 36 million people up there, we're the second largest country next to Russia when it comes to land. But people, it's basically, you could probably put all of the Canadians in Texas, because there's 26, 27 million people here.
Right.
So there's quite a bit of a difference when it comes to per capita, for land and people and whatnot. So we don't have we're a rich country. Canada is, I should say, is a rich country, but they don't have the people and the support, because obviously there's not enough. It goes with the same with people. You got to have the money and whatnot. So that's another reason, on top of God having me down here and staying here, is there's kind of a ceiling up there in Canada, and down here, I mean, I know the government's trying to make it their ceiling here, so you can't grow, but it's pretty much a wide open ceiling here, and this is one reason why I come down. It's because of my ideas and whatnot. Whereas I don't have the support up there as far as the people, the resources and whatnot also. So it all ties together, and as I love Canada, but at the same time I just extended I exhausted my resources or whatever there, and I believe America is second to none, and this is a great nation, and it will be great again once we get rid of the Democrats.
Well, Glenn, before we bring Liz on, real quick, I want to remind everybody. Glenn made some very, very good points. Of course, this is Glenn Atkinson, who's the new co-host of News and Commentary. Very excited to have Glenn be a part of the program. Glenn, this is why the election coming up in 2016 is so important if we're going to protect the American way of life. America is still the most unique country ever in the history of the world. It's such a unique experiment. No matter who you are, you can be what you want to be. As long as you're willing to work for it and earn it, you can be who you want to be. And you know what? It's time for everybody, and I keep telling this, and I can't stress enough to you folks, you've got to be involved in your children's education. You got to bring God back to the dinner table. You got to bring the fathers and the family back to the dinner table. You got to bring God back to the classroom. You got to get involved with your children's education. You got to get involved with your community. By God, get to know your neighbors. It's so important. Know what's happening in your community. Know what's happening in the state. Know what is happening. It doesn't take a lot to get involved and know what's going on. Glenn and I and Liz here in a minute, we can preach from the mountaintops, from the rooftops, so we're blue in the face. But if you're not willing to get your butt up off the couch and do a simple thing such as go to the voting booth, then once again, you're part of the problem, not part of the solution. And so that is going to be a reoccurring theme, Glenn, that we are going to be preaching over and over and over again. Get involved, know what is happening, because if you want to come to me and you complain and you said, hey, here was Glenn. Glenn was just talking about he's working on becoming a legal citizen in this country. He can't even vote yet, but yet he's still taking part in the process. Being a part of shows like this, working for candidates, getting out and talking and calling, learning about the candidates, telling other people about them. This is a man that is not even a citizen yet, working on becoming a citizen, that's more involved than the majority of Americans are today. And it's a very, very sad commentary of that. Well, Glenn, we've come to the time. It is now time to turn the show over. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, the one and the only Liz Loris. make sure we get Liz. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. It's good to be back on the air with you, Dan, and back on the air with you, Glenn. It's good to have our second round here with all three of us.
Yeah, great to have. Good to hear you.
Well, Liz, I know a lot has been going on. You're back up to speed with everything that I kind of blindsided everybody with a couple of weeks ago. So I know you're back up to speed, and I know you've probably got quite a few things you want to talk about tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Liz. What's on your mind, and what's really working on your heart tonight?
Yeah, it's funny for all the listeners that are tuning in tonight. Dan and I don't pre-plan this whatsoever. No. We just kind of go with the flow. And it was really funny. God works in mysterious ways, because I had a completely different thing I wanted to talk about tonight, and I just felt kind of the move of the spirit, and I didn't know that you were going to be doing the introduction tonight to kind of the new facelift and transitioning your new brand over, but it actually really dovetails into kind of some of the experiences I had this week, and wanted to share with the rest of the people that are tuning in tonight. You were talking earlier about, putting your own brand forward and bringing that truth. And I think when we look at everything that's going on in America today, we as Christians, and particularly as conservative Christians, are facing a battle right now, and we're having that battle waged against us at every side. And so obviously coming from that military background, I always look at what's the battle strategy, what's the price that we're willing to pay, and what are we up against as far as opposition. And I wanted to share kind of a story that happened to me this week. As some of you or most of you know, that I do a lot of work with veterans. I'm a military advocate, prior Army. And I had gone into a national organization here in the Oregon area in the Northwest, and I was going to talk to them about suicide in the military and suicide with our veterans that are coming out of the military. And I was shocked to find out that there was 27% of the suicides, when they say, there's 22 suicides a day of our veterans, not active duty, but just our veterans, 27% of that is coming from Oregon, and which was shocking to me, because we don't even have all of our states that are contributing. And, if you look at the top states that are out there of suicide of veterans, Oregon doesn't even have, they're not even in the top 5 as far as states that veterans will move to. So I get all my information together, and I go in to talk to this organization, and it was a large board that I was in front of, and none of them were military people. And I frankly had to even wonder when I walked out of there if anyone had ever actually really dealt with veterans or if they were brand new to it. But they almost didn't believe, and I'm very analytical, so I had all my statistics. I had where they were cited from and why we needed to make some of the changes with our veteran care that I was proposing to them. So I walk out of there, and it was like a firing line of people that, we had, I call them the Poindexters. They were like the psychologists and psychiatrists, but they weren't military people. And so their eyes were like glassed over as I'm talking to them. And I went home, and I felt really discouraged. And I was just kind of, all that self-doubt comes in, and maybe I went at this wrong, and, maybe I should have had gone back to school and got this counseling degree, even though I've worked with veterans for a decade and a half, besides just being one. And so that condemnation and that self-doubt had set in. And the last time that I was on the show, of course, I had a very different tone, and I took a lot of heat from that. And I tell these stories because I think a lot of people can relate to situations where really felt that they knew what they were talking about, and they felt very good about what they were making a stand for. And what happens is then you end up getting attacked, and you start doubting yourself, and you start coming in with all this, like, you know, did I do the right thing? And I think what kind of came to my mind is I was thinking about, you know, everything that we're dealing with in our nation, and really, like the Bible says, that we battle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and rulers of evil. And the enemy is not going to go out there and attack people that aren't a threat. He's attacking the people that are standing up for what they believe in. And I think, you know, it's even more important as we're preparing for the 2016 elections, as, you know, all the things that are happening in the nation, that we get very grounded, and that, you know, we are not, you know, letting the enemy take us off our stance. So knowing what that battle strategy is, knowing that there is going to be an attack when we stand up for something that we believe in. An example of that is, like, if you think of an airplane that's getting ready to take off, you know, everything kind of shakes around and stuff shakes loose. And I think that's kind of what's happening to a lot of our people that are standing up and talking about things and making a stand for things. They're getting attacked, and then they're feeling discouraged. And I think now more than ever, we have to put on the full armor of God and to, you know, shod our feet with, you know, the shoes of peace, and we need to be prepared and to be ready.
Exactly. And, you know, I've been side by side with Liz since, you know, with a lot of the things that she's started with, and, you know, especially coming on and doing the radio and such. And I can tell you folks that what Liz has done, especially with everything that she continues to do for all of our veterans, for all of our brave men and women that continue to serve, and then for the fact that she decided that it was time to take a stance for the future of our country. And Liz really surprised a lot of people when she came out and started taking a more political stance on a few things. And they were really surprised, I know, to find out what your real thoughts were politically on a lot of things. And so I know you took a lot of heat for that, and a lot of associations ended because of that. But a lot of new associations and friendships have opened as well. And I've seen the attacks that you have taken, Liz, and that you've had to deal with. You know, it's something that I go through every day. It comes with the territory. It's what I do for a living. A lot of this was new, but I can tell you now that, you know, everything that Liz does and everything that she's undertaking right now, whether it's because Liz really has. Liz, now that I'm thinking about it, you're fighting a three-front war. Now, let me explain real quick. Number one, it is everything you continue to do and fight for all of our veterans and our men and women in the military. Number two, everything that the stances that you are taking for the future of our country politically, and getting the truth and information out there. And number three has to deal with your Christian faith. It's and this is something that you will hear Glenn talk about a lot as well. It's something I will start talking about more as well. But you know, using Liz as the example, I'm going to pick on her. Liz comes on a lot and talks about her Christian faith, and a lot of the topics she talks about has to do with faith and morality. And ladies and gentlemen, we're facing a war on Christianity in this country that of the likes we've never witnessed before. And we're fighting a war in the Middle East where Christians are being exterminated. There is a genocide against Christianity. Christians are being killed for their faith, for refusing to renounce their faith. And so, you know, somebody like Liz is now fighting that three-front war for our veterans, for our country, and for the faith, the very moral soul, the very moral fiber, the very moral foundation that our country was founded on, Liz.
Yeah, and, you know, I think the thing that's, you know, kind of important to note is, you know, a lot of times when you're talking to conservatives, most people will agree that Ronald Reagan was an amazing president. And just
right.
like in your intro, Dan, Ronald Reagan is talking about that we are one nation that was founded under God. And I think a lot of times in this politically correct culture or poisonous culture that has been breeding and brewing over the last 2 presidential campaigns, there's this almost a shame associated with being a Christian, and I think we have the responsibility as Christians to stand up and start changing that and to stop having the shame. I was recently meeting with some of the Oregon Republican Party and trying to actually get involved because most of my work has been national and not even in my home state, which is predominantly a Democratic state. And we were having this conversation, and they said, it's more acceptable socially, at least on the West Coast, to come out of the closet than it is to come out with being conservative, or to, let alone, God forbid, to be a Christian. And I think that, we need to change that and challenge that because, if you think about it, like Satan, the number one thing that he's going to do, his number one strategy against us is defeating us and coming against our minds, even if he can just alter it just slightly or twist the truth and making us compromise. And it's that little bit of compromise over time that ends up changing our society and ends up changing the tone. I think about, the way that you cook a frog. It's not turning up the heat right away and throwing them in a boiling pot. It's a slow change. And so I think we need to be reminded of that and go back to that we are that nation that's founded under God. The Bible talks about there's 365 times that the Bible says fear not. And there's a reason why God put that in the Bible, the exact number of days we have in a year, because we need to be reminded every single day to fear not and to not bend to this fear, to twist the truth, to stay silent when we know we should speak up, and to just know that battle is going to come and that the enemy is going to fight us, because the last thing he wants are people that are standing up and that are speaking the truth, that are controlling the mic, that are inspiring and encouraging and, lifting up others to do the same. I had actually just done a study recently talking about Jericho back in the Bible. And if you think about Jericho, and of course many people know the story, it was this impenetrable wall. And some of the studies that I was looking at, they were saying that it was actually, before you got to that wall, it was 27 feet wide, and it was a 9-foot deep pit. So it lined the entire city, it lined the entire wall. So if you were actually able, any of the military that was trying to penetrate that wall, trying to get into that city, if they actually got through that pit, the 27-foot wide pit, 9-foot deep, then they would actually have to engage the enemy with their arrows that were coming. And then you've got the actual wall of Jericho, which is 17 feet high, and it was actually 5 feet deep of stone wall. And most people that know the story of Jericho, of course, you've got Joshua and the Israelite army, and the wall ends up falling down. And I share that story because I think it represents a lot of what we end up facing, not only as Christians, but just conservatives in general. We face these seemingly impossible situations, these situations that just seem absolutely hopeless. And I think it's important for all of us to have that reminder that those are the points that God works his greatest miracles. That moment where everything seems like it's coming against you, like it seems like in our nation today, like it feels when every time we step out and we speak the truth and that attack comes, we feel like, oh my gosh, like everything's falling apart. But it's important to remember his power is made perfect in our weakness. And it's in that moment that we remember, to fear not. We remember that we do serve a powerful and a mighty God. And I think it's important, like every time I, talk to people about suicide intervention or work with our veterans that are trying to deal with PTSD and things that are coming against that battlefield of their mind, that self-doubt, that shame and condemnation, it's important to remember that with God, what seems like it's a hopeless situation is not only possible, but it's actually favorable, because that is where he works his greatest miracles. His power is made absolutely perfect in our weakness. So we have to hang on to that and to continue to profess the truth, because we know that he promised us and he's faithful today, tomorrow, and always. And we see that when we go back to the scripture, when we turn off the television, when we stop listening to the rest of the other worldly influences that are out there, and we remember that we are a nation founded under God and under his principles, then I think that's where we get that confidence that we should be walking in.
I want to remind everybody, once again, you're listening to News and Commentary on HighPlainsTalkRadio.com, on SHRmedia.com. The SHR Media website is down right now, but Sean Lewis assures me that it will be back up and functioning soon. If you're wanting to get into the chat room, you can access the chat room for SHR Media at HighPlainsTalkRadio.com. You'll notice that I'm being very careful and very precise with my websites, because I'm trying to make sure I get all the right ones correct as we do this. We got about 10 minutes left in tonight's show. I want to bring Glenn back into the conversation real quick. Glenn, I want to get your thoughts real quick on what Liz was talking about.
Well, I agree totally, 100%. You know, there's some things this great nation is gone away from and missing, and that is the repentance. We need to get Jesus back in. Dan, you touched on it also. This is first and foremost. We gotta get back to repenting and getting back into bringing Jesus into our homes and communities and everything we do, because what's going on here is the devil has taken over. He's running the world here. And you give him that little crack, and he'll just kick the door in, and that's what he's trying to do, is mess with people's minds, and we're seeing the results of it all right now. And I've been saying for the longest time, there's two things that need to change, and that is to in with Jesus and out with political correctness. If we can just get people to realize those two things. The Bible talks a lot about political correctness and how wrong it is. God, he wants us to be bold, sin not, but be bold. Like for example, like Donald Trump's doing. He's got the boldness. He's got no political correctness. He's not doing things that are he's not getting paid off and whatever have you and whatnot. So he can just speak his mind, and but being bold and yet sinning not, repenting and whatnot, without this political correctness, and watch this whole nation turn right around, right back to even better than the Reagan years. This can happen, and it takes one of us at a time. It's a big elephant out there that we're trying to eat, and all you can do is just eat it one bite at a time. And with these two things, bringing Jesus back in, as our foundation once again, and throwing out that political correctness out the window, amazing things will happen. I do believe that.
I have to put the disclaimer here, because the animal rights activists are going to be calling me. First of all, we had Liz talking about boiling frogs, and now we have Glenn talking about eating elephants piece by piece, slowly but surely. Just to let everybody out there know that we fully support animal rights around here. This show is actually a big sponsor of PETA. I want everybody to know that up front. This show is a major sponsor of PETA, the People for Edible Tasty Animals. So we believe in outdoor sports, hunting, etc. But anyway, Liz, I want to come back to you. We got 5 minutes left, and I want to come and let you have some closing remarks. And ladies and gentlemen, once again, if we run over, that's not unusual for this show, especially when Liz is on. So bear with us if we run over a few minutes tonight. Once we get to talking, that's just the way it goes. And ladies and gentlemen, I own the show. I own the network. I can take some liberties if I choose to do so. So without further ado, Liz, what else is on your mind tonight?
You and my pastor, they said, Liz, I think you're a mouthpiece in the body of Christ. I'm like, well, that would explain a lot. Talking too much. But, it's funny because I had recently heard, and I think it's actually John Hagee who had said, he's going to end up having to apologize to America, or apologize to Sodom and Gomorrah if America doesn't clean up their act. And I think, it's probably a phrase that has been out there for a while, but I think it really hit me this last time I had heard it, where it just kind of sunk in. It's like that's the truth, is we're becoming like a Sodom and Gomorrah by being silent and crumbling under this political correctness. And it's not that, to Glenn's point, it's not that we have to come out there and be aggressive, but be bold in what we're saying, and I think when we're doing it in love and compassion, the truth speaks for itself. It needs no other assistance. Romans 12:2 says to not be conformed to this world, but to be transformed by the entire renewal of our mind. And so I think that battlefield, like I was talking about earlier, it's won and lost in the recesses of our mind, and it's coming to us, to the front of our doorsteps, like you had said, Dan, of not being involved in our schools and not being involved in politics and what's going on with our communities. And so the biblical principles that were laid out, a couple thousand years ago still apply today, that we have to continue to renew our entire mind and to not be conformed to society. And it doesn't mean that we have to be aggressive, but we do need to be bold in our statement of truth and in our representation that we are one nation that is founded under God.
Glenn, I'm going to come to you real quick for some final remarks, and then I'll close up the show with some remarks of my own.
Well, you're so right there, Liz. And it's that is exactly right. We have to be careful as being Christians not to be too aggressive, because the idea is to be bold and yet draw people into the realization of what Jesus' word is for, and if we can do that without offending anybody, in as far as being aggressive. I'm not talking about offending as in political correctness. I'm just talking about being too aggressive. Assertiveness is great, and boldness in our speech. And that's exactly what Jesus meant. That's what he was. He had anger too, but yet he sinned not. Because he made some statements and he repeated himself a lot, so people get the understanding. So that's all part of the boldness. And yet no one really has to be aggressive. It just has to be consistent, firm while they're bold. So I really appreciate what you're saying there.
Well, Liz and Glenn, I'm going to wrap it up for tonight, and I'm going to sum it up with this. And I thank the listeners tonight. And this was exactly when I contacted Liz and let her know a few weeks ago I was bringing the show back on a full-time basis, even though we've had to kind of put off bringing it back on a full-time basis a little bit to get some other things going and some other changes. But and then I contacted Glenn last week about coming on and co-hosting on a permanent basis. What I was looking for is exactly what you've gotten tonight, folks, and that is what this show is going to be about. You're going to get a lot of news. You're going to get a lot of commentary. You're going to get a lot of political stuff. You're going to get sports stuff. You're going to get some casual conversation. But you're also going to get a lot of great conversation, a lot of great knowledge about something that I feel is, very key to the success of our country, very key to the success of making sure that this country that we love so dear, that the country that our founders actually envisioned, is still here for our children and our grandchildren and for our great-grandchildren. And people hear me talking about this all the time, but I'm going to repeat it again. This is not a fight for tomorrow. This is a fight for today. This is not a fight for our children and our grandchildren. This is a fight for us to take up today. And, this is, and at the very core of that, at the very core of our country, at the very core of everything that we believe in, at the very core of everything that our country was founded on, is faith and morality. Faith and morality is what anchors this country. It is the foundation of this country. And then you add to that truth. Truth is so important. We have to make sure that everybody knows the truth of what is happening out there. We have to get the information out there so that they know what is actually taking place and that they're not being fed a bunch of garbage, a bunch of conspiracy theories, a bunch of sound bites, a bunch of press releases. Ladies and gentlemen, that's not what I want for my listeners. It's not what I want for my readers. It's not what I want to hear from other co-hosts on my radio network. It's certainly not anything I want to hear from Glenn and Liz as they help me co-host this show, moving forward. And you've gotten a good idea tonight that that's what you're not going to hear. You're going to hear a lot of talk straight from the heart, a lot of common sense talk, a lot of well-researched talk. You're going to get a lot of stories that we're not just BSing about, folks. We really know what we're talking about. We've researched. We've gone out, did the legwork. We've done the investigation on the news stories, on the commentary that we're presenting to you. And you know what? If we're wrong, we don't mind being corrected. That's part of human nature. That's part of the discussion. That's part of what happens. And that's what this show is going to be about moving forward, ladies and gentlemen. Well, Liz and Glenn, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on tonight. Liz, I know that we will see you again next Monday as well as in the future on special broadcasts when you'll do some special stuff for us. When you feel like it, we'll be turning over the mic and the show to you for some of that in the future to come. And Glenn, tomorrow night, buddy, it's going to be, I'm actually not even going to talk about the debate tomorrow night. We're going to talk about your story. And the reason I'm focusing on that is because, immigration, especially illegal immigration, is really getting pushed to the back burner right now on a lot of things. And I think illegal immigration has a lot to do with and goes hand in hand with the terrorism threat that we're facing in our country right now. But you're going to be able to expose with your story a lot of the problems that we have in our immigration today and a lot of the dangers that it poses. And so I'm really looking forward to that tonight. Well, Liz and Glenn, it's been a lot of fun tonight, guys.
It's always an honor to be on with you guys.
Yes, thank you both. Good night to both of you, America, and God bless.
You bet. Well, folks, once again, you've been listening to News and Commentary with Dan Butcher, along with the one and only Liz Luras and Glenn Atkinson. Folks, we will be back with you again tomorrow night, same time, same place. This has been News and Commentary with Dan Butcher on HighPlainsTalkRadio.com, SHRmedia.com, BlogTalkRadio.com, Spreaker.com, and iTunes. Folks, we're everywhere. Once again, thank you, good night, and God bless.